We are good to go now. It is off the grid, in the wild, and artists experience nature as they create outside for 2 weeks in July. Each day is required to meet basic needs for shelter and food. As we work together to meet these needs, we built a community. Critiques were held every few days to discuss progress as each artist explored the landscape in their own visual language. During these 2 weeks, we disentangled from our technology, we slowed down and simplified, and then we focused on art making. The culmination of this residency was this exhibition at Abend Gallery in Denver, Colorado, which is up now, and you can view the show at the Abend Gallery website. Resident artists were asked to produce work following the residency informed by their experience, which is included in the exhibition. We would like to send a big, big thank you to Marilyn K. Ramming for her generous donation of her land to make this residency project possible. I'd like to introduce our moderator, Caitlin. Caitlin is a figurative painter working on a series about the suspended in time moments when the mind is somewhere else. Mysterious works conveying the dark beauty that we all notice from time to time. Caitlin Hurd graduated with an MFA in painting from the New York Academy of Art. She's the founder of Spark Portraits, and her paintings and drawings have been the subject of numerous solo and group exhibitions. Her work has been represented in galleries in New York City, St. Bart, California, and Florida, as well as prestigious private and corporate collections, including Dasha Zhukova and Howard Tolman. Caitlin.
Hi, thank you, Karis. The artists off grid joining us tonight are Lindsey Dunnagan, Ivy Hickam, and Fabricio Suarez. Lindsey uses diverse techniques to explore the human interaction with the natural environment. Her work connects humanity to nature in small and large ways. At the intimate level, she tells the story of home and identity. On a larger scale, she considers her spiritual ties to nature and highlights the human impacts of climate change. Her work is an investigation of micro and macro personal connections and a reminder of the space we traverse. In 2014, Lindsey completed a Master of Fine Arts in Painting and Drawing, and in 2015, she finished with a Master of Arts in Art History from Texas Women's University. Lindsey is an assistant professor of art and painting at Truman State University in Missouri. Welcome, Lindsey.
Thanks.
Ivy is a painter and illustrator. She earned a BFA from Syracuse University and her MFA from the New York Academy of Art. She currently lives in Brooklyn and has for the past 15 years, but she grew up in Colorado and goes back often. Her work is always in some way autobiographical. Her landscapes explore relationships to place and time. Her most ongoing series is about the woods she played in as a child. That forest burnt the summer she went to Artists Off Grid in 2018. She documents the landscape to see how it changes while she's away, to see how it gets destroyed and how it grows back again. Welcome, Ivy. And Fabricio Suarez is an oil painter with a BFA in fine art and illustration from the School of Visual Arts. His current studio practice consists of moody surrealist paintings, distorting traditional European portraits and landscapes with spiritual elements of American savagery. These are impulsive brushstrokes dictating the direction of the painting. He is an avid plein air painter focusing on his own urban industrial neighborhood. He also has traveled around the US, Europe, and South America, painting a great variety of landscapes. His studio is currently in Jersey City. Welcome, Fabricio.
Hey.
Yay.
I'm going to start off by asking the artists a few questions. The three of you bonded right away. Can you talk about what drew you together?
Well, one thing that happened when we arrived, everyone was strangers for the most part, especially myself, not having gone to the New York Academy of Art. I wasn't even familiar with any of the names of the people who were at this residency. But once I arrived and got to know people, I immediately hit it off with Ivy and Fabricio. It just felt like they were kindred spirits. And part of it was that they were just really goofy and wacky. And so I knew I could be fully myself with them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, pretty much the same. They're two goofy ladies. Amazing.
Cool. We're serious about our work though, and I feel like we all went off painting all together, so that was also a bonding thing.
It's unique, you know. I don't have a lot of friends that I am like really close to who are also avid painters, and so it was just a unique experience to be with these people for such a long period of time and like them so much as people, and then also have the exact same hobby.
Lindsey, you have a few different series that look very different from each other. Can you talk about your Skimming Boundaries and your estate sale series and how you arrived to get such different results?
Sure. For my Skimming Boundaries series, I actually started by experimenting with natural dyes on paper. And this is something that I learned when I was in the Peace Corps in Morocco. We were dyeing wool fibers. And so I knew that when I came back to the United States, I was going to try to figure out how to do it in my art. And finally, you know, years later, I was dyeing paper. And then at the same time, I had moved to Missouri. And Missouri has these really magical twisting forests where trees just kind of grow together and intertwine. And there's something magical and mysterious about it. So when looking at the dyed paper and these forests that I was walking in daily, I noticed a really interesting relationship where I could combine the forest into the dyed papers in a way that allowed that mystery to be enhanced. And so that's kind of what I was expecting to go into the Artists Off Grid Residency pursuing. But when I got to Colorado, I realized that the forests were actually totally different from what I expected. They weren't dense and wet. They were arid and kind of dispersed. So I did create a couple of drawings while I was there, but I realized that the landscape wasn't quite right for that work. So I changed gears, and instead I decided to pursue another series that I had also been working on, called Estate Sale. And the estate sale pieces are about wild flora and fauna that are of conservation concern. So what I did first was all of these wooden substrates in the shape of pendants, jewelry pendants that a woman might wear on a necklace. And then instead of putting precious gems in the center, I put flora that are of conservation concern, and also 24 karat gold leaf. And the idea is that this natural world is something that may not be passed down to generations because there are so many things that are in decline right now. So at the residency, I really prepared for this work instead by taking a lot of photographs of the flora that I saw and doing a lot of research about what's in decline. And unfortunately, there's quite a lot of stuff that we're starting to miss.
For each of you, how did the residency influence your work today? Starting with Ivy.
Well, whenever I go on a residency, I find it really important to be present in the landscape that I'm at. I usually try to pick residencies that are about an interesting place I want to go to and that are something I've not been to. So it was interesting to go to Colorado because I was born there, and I was wondering how much of a residency would feel like, but it felt really like a residency because of circumstance and because the landscape is very similar to landscape I often see in Colorado near the foothills. It's very dry and arid with like juniper trees and it's like almost desert. But the forest I usually draw when I'm home is higher altitude and it's really different. So when I work from life, when I go outside, it's kind of like equivalent to when you're drawing the figure from life. You're training your eye so that when I go back to my studio later and I have to work not from life, I'm able to like take from what I've learned and think more about the memory of a space and like the color it is in reality, and the space being broader, condensing the space. And so painting from life and just doing it on residency and just like as often as possible informs the studio work. So
Thank you. Lindsay?
You're asking what we gained from the residency?
Yeah, how did it influence your work today?
Well, one thing that really I got a lot out of was, so I felt like the drawings that I was doing on the naturally dyed paper were getting the imagery that I was looking for. I felt like they were mysterious and interesting. And I was hoping to do that in painting. But when I created straightforward paintings, I just couldn't have that same mystery. And Ivy actually pointed out that perhaps the reason that the drawings were working is because I started off with this base that I was responding to, which was that paper. And she said, you should maybe consider just painting those marks from the natural dye onto a canvas so that you have this background that's similar to your drawings to work off of. And that was just a really big breakthrough for me. I had never thought of doing that. And so at the residency, I actually painted a whole bunch of panels to mimic the naturally dyed papers. And then when I came home, I painted imagery into the work. And actually, Ivy, you can see in this photo, is in a whole bunch of them. So that's another way that the residency really influenced my work. She was such a good sport. I was like, hey, can you go climb into that fallen tree and like slowly come out and then look to your left and reach your arm up? And she was she was game. So we spent a little bit of time each day wandering around and finding interesting places for her to pose for me. Yeah, so I benefited a lot in terms of critique.
For me, I think it's it's really what I learned from everyone there, like the critiques that we had. And I mean, for me, I'm used to painting more, cityscapes around here. And so there's a lot of more contrast, a lot of more, sharper lines. I deal a lot with light. And so out there, the light was a little bit flat for me. So I couldn't get a lot of depth in a lot of my paintings. And, but the critiques helped me out a lot. And I think that for me, it was basically, it's all information when I paint outdoors to sort of bring it back to the studio and do something with it there. So for me, it was all sort of putting it in the memory bank and see what I can do with it later. So, a lot of observation and sketching and painting, and then see what I can do with it afterwards. So it was great.
Thanks. Lindsay, you were in the Peace Corps. Can you talk about what the residency was like for you, having a ton of off-the-grid experience?
What's funny is that actually it was in some ways a little more nerve-wracking to do the residency because, when I joined the Peace Corps, it was just something I'd always wanted to do. I wanted to give some of my time, learn what it's like to live in another country and to live in very different circumstances. But I knew that I wasn't going to be like an international worker as a career. So the pressure wasn't as high, it was something fun to do, where I could hopefully make an impact and learn a lot. And this residency, it was like, okay, you're going to spend 2 weeks with your contemporaries, other artists who are accomplished. But you're also going to not shower, and you're going to be stinky and sweaty, and you're going to camp next to them. And so it was just it was just very different. That's my tent right there. Luckily everyone was just so much fun, so down to earth. I think maybe that's part of it. You don't do this kind of thing if you're not willing to just be vulnerable. So that was a really pleasant finding. But yeah, that's how it was different, is this is my career, art. This is something that I care deeply about. And yeah, it felt a little bit more stressful initially.
Okay. And Fabricio, you had never been camping before. Can you talk about what the residency was like for you?
Well, for me, it was really easy because I actually had a friend who lent me from A to Z everything for camping. So, you know, he's a super camper, and so he lent me his car, his tent. He lives in Colorado. So I really had it easy with that because he lent me like cooking gear, his tent, sleeping bag, the whole nine. Like as soon as I saw this residency, I contacted him. He's like, I'll get you whatever you want. So that's what led me to apply, really, because that's one of his items right there, the gel boil. A little coffee machine. Yeah.
And you had an espresso maker, right?
The tiny espresso maker. That was more complicated than that it was, you know, convenient, but yeah, it was fun.
Good.
I would go camping again.
You survived.
Even
Yes.
to carry the big water jugs that were full
Yeah.
of water.
They're both full.
There's water coming out of one, so that's
Proof.
Something in it. Ivy, the monotypes that you made for the exhibition were created after you were home from Artists Off Grid. Can you talk about what your studio process is like, working from photo and thinking about color beyond the photo?
Yes. So when I make my monotypes, which I've been doing them now since the New York Academy, actually, is when I got into them. I go into the city to a community print shop to Blackburn, and it's a great space. I miss it right now. And I use a big etching press, so I can't really do them from life. And so it's actually gotten me out of my comfort zone, figuring out how to work from photo and stay excited about it. I paint on a piece of plexi with etching ink, and I run it through the press, so you get off a one-off image that's reversed image. And I think the removal of the process from like direct painting is part of it, but also it's also helpful to paint from life and then think about that and go to the studio with a photo, but then also the memory of the actual place I was at. So the sooner I do the work of the landscape I'm looking at, the better I figured out over the years.
And you lived in Colorado your whole life. Right before the residency, your childhood forest had burnt down. Can you talk about that series?
Yeah. I went and saw the forest. I had read and heard from my family, read in the news, like literally the week before the residency, that the forest I grew up just playing in as a kid and outside of Summit County burnt to the ground. And so I had gone to see my family and was in those woods right before the residency. And I was standing in the woods, and it didn't really hit me how I felt about it until I was in them. And it was very hard to look at, and it was very upsetting to me, but I also was fascinated by it. And I was like, this is really interesting. I need to paint this. Because I had already been painting those woods over the years. I'd already been making monotypes of the beetle kill and like drought and like clear cutting and everything. It's like the woods already looked totally different from when I was there. And so this was just like another level of just overnight destruction and change. And when I went back to paint them the following summer, it was the summer after the residency. And so everything was green because it was very wet that summer. And so that's like the work I made for the show, was this regrowth that was happening. So the monotypes and the large painting I did were both from that summer. And I went and painted from life in those woods. And then I went back to my Brooklyn studio and then to my bedroom when I lost my Brooklyn studio, and I finished that painting. about those woods. And I think that just getting back into the painting at the residency after seeing such an extreme thing was just like, oh, I can plein air. I used to do that, and it just got me back into it and informed the studio work.
Fabricio, when I was looking at our applications for the Artists Off Grid Residency, I had about 98% all women applying. And when I saw your work, I was just like, okay, well, I've been working on a concept for a woman-only residency and a woman-only exhibition, and then your work came in. Yeah, you're awesome. So I just loved your surreal kind of looking at reality and imagination. And I just wanted you to talk about your studio practice and how it was like to work off the grid.
Well, I remember off grid when you told me, he's like, are you going to do any of your type of paintings? Because I was doing a lot of just regular plein airs.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to like be outdoors, because when I'm outdoors, I want to paint what I see. I really want to paint what I see, and I cannot do anything. I cannot make up anything because what I'm looking at is already kind of amazing. So, and then you told me to do something, and I came up with something like this. Kind of like I try to like change the color up a little bit, and but this is what I do in my studio because I have nothing to look at, and I don't like to work from photographs. So this is what I do in the studio, and I'm comfortable doing it there based on my memory of what nature looks like, because like I said, I don't look at photographs. So that was the difference, that I was trying to paint what I want, what I was looking at, because it's sort of what I keep in my memory bank. And then doing something like this was really hard for me outdoors. But when I come to the studio, I have nothing else to look at, so it just all comes from memory and like impulsive brushstrokes.
Ivy, you're an enthusiastic plein air painter, but you weren't before. What happened plein air for you, Artists Off Grid?
I would say not enthusiastic. I am enthusiastic, but I'm still learning about plein air, just enough for it to inform the work in my studio. But because I think it's so fun, like to paint from life, I'm slowly becoming addicted to going. And actually, Breezy and we've like met up and gone up Hudson Valley, painted the Hudson River. We've been super dorks, and we even went to like the Thomas Cole house and saw an exhibition of rather dreadful landscapes by Thomas Cole.
Horrible landscape.
Horrible. But the day we went and we painted the river, and we set up our plein air setups. I got a totally different setup when I got back to Brooklyn. I like totally spent some money and got exactly the setup Breezy has, because I was like, that makes sense. That setup is great.
Yeah.
And, I was sick of my clunky setup that I had broken way back in the day in my first residency in Scotland trying to plein air. So I was like, it's time to upgrade. And I was like very envious of his setup. So we've had some good times going up the Hudson and into Jersey even. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Just having someone to paint with, and like wanting to just paint for a few hours. Like we painted in a riverbed one day, and it's great to have that in New York, to be able to do that. So yeah, I'm becoming a plein air painter. I can't help it.
Fabricio, how has your work changed or been informed by the residency?
Well, I think like I was saying before, I think it's been informed a lot. I think that spending those 2 weeks there and having no other goal but to like barely feed yourself and just go paint for the whole day, it's just it was just amazing. So I think I took a lot from it. I think I learned a lot from it, and it's informed my work a lot since. And it will continue to do so, I think, because you know, for now it's what I paint. So it's been great.
It's interesting to note that the work in the exhibition that the three of you developed was created after the residency. What is the most important thing you got out of the Artists Off Grid that continues on now?
I mean, really, I did benefit a lot and gain a lot artistically, but I think the most valuable thing I got really was these friendships.
Damn it! There's a thing.
Lindsay, can you tell us what's happening here?
Yes, so there's a place in Iowa, which is nearby where I live, and it is the place where American Gothic was actually staged. So this is the house that's in that painting, and you can go visit it. So Ivy and I visited each other, and this was one of the things that we did when she came to Missouri. We drove up there. It's just like an hour and a half from my house. Yeah, it was a total blast. So, and then I also got to go to New York and visit Ivy and see Fabricio. We had dinner one night, and then Ivy took me to all these fun places. Yeah, I mean, these are friendships that will last a lifetime, and who would have thought that just a little 2-week residency would have given me something so valuable.
We also were really intellectual and went to Nelson Atkins in Kansas City as well. But
Oh yeah.
I gotta say I think that was my favorite absurd moment. When I visited Lindsay, we went on quite a fun Americana road trip.
Yeah, we visited a ghost town. And
yeah, we saw a ghost town. We saw a ghost town, and we also, when we were at the Atkins, we saw Goldsworthy, and then we were in Storm King in New York, we saw Goldsworthy, like the stone walls. So that was kind of fun. And I mean, honestly, like we talk all the time on the phone, and we like talk to each other about our art on the phone. Like we give each other crits and advice, and it's wonderful. And so even though I don't get to see Lindsay because she's not local, it's been such a joy. And Fabricio's local, so I have him to go to the Met with, and that's great. So we'll meet and we'll go see landscapes there when we're not outside. So it's just such a great thing to have. And all the other artists at the residency, like on Instagram, we all look at each other's work and comment on each other's work, and we can just see what they're doing. It's on the grid, but it's nice. So
I'd like to hear about some of your favorite moments.
Escaping into town, you know, for a day to pick up some groceries and to treat ourselves with like.
Can you tell us what that is?
I can't. What that was.
Or maybe Ivy can.
What was that?
It was kind of wrong. It was like frosting and ice cream, and like I don't even know. It was really hot out that day, to be fair, though. It was like in the 90s in Fort Collins, so it seemed necessary. We thought it was necessary.
Yeah, like having a little horrible cheeseburger from that place was heaven, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that ice cream was a big deal. The thing that was funny to me was that, you know, after camping for so long, you're just eating like a can of beans here, a can of beans, or like whatever, you know, just minimal stuff that's not super flavorful, or at least that's how I was eating. And so then I went to go get this big old ice cream, and it made me so sick, which is not like me. I'm very good at eating ice cream. So anyway, that was a really fun moment for me to have this treat, but it was also interesting. Okay, but I have another great moment, which is that Fabricio had these really elaborate vacuum sealed meals that were like gourmet food. And I'm talking good stuff, like stuff you would eat at your home. What?
They were store-bought.
They were fancy. Yeah. And he was just like adding hot water to them, and then they would just poof up and be delicious. And every once in a while he wouldn't finish the whole thing, and he was like, "Hey, Ivy and Lindsay, you guys want some of this?" And we were like, "Yes." And so it was also, I think it was just a really fun memory. I think I have my fondest memories revolve around food.
Well, I mean, Breezy had pad thai, but we had hummus sandwiches, and just like eating with everybody at the table. We had some hummingbirds show up at the table while we're eating. They would just like like fly midair in front of us because all the red on the table, I think it's the red. So that was fun. And then also just like one of my other favorite things is we would all just instinctively meet up at the end of the day, like at sunset, at like what Caitlin dubbed the nest, which was where all the clouds rolled in, and we'd all like go cloud landscape painting at sunset because it's like quick and the sunlight was fading. So it was like Constable Cloud time. It's really, then everyone would just sit around and talk about their day. So that was nice too. There's the nest.
There it is.
There it is.
So I'd like to open this up to questions. If anybody has anything to ask, go ahead and type it into the Q&A. Can you tell us what happened after the residency?
I took a class at the university where I teach about quilt making, and I actually took some of the images from the residency and made them into quilts. And so that was really fun for me because I hadn't thought about that new medium, and the stuff I got from the residency translated really well.
And I kind of want that quilt you made of me. It's awesome.
I've used in all my artwork now.
I just started painting the forest series for the show after the residency. I went back to Colorado, as I said before, and I went and like actually painted in those woods. And then I went back to Brooklyn and my studio and started the series and also the print shop. But then I lost my studio in Brooklyn. They kicked us out. And so I started painting the big painting when the show at Abend was going to happen. I finished it in my bedroom. So I basically, before this current situation, was painting in my bedroom on this wall behind me right now. But I also just started painting with Breezy, going landscape painting more often up to Hudson and all that good stuff, and visiting Lindsey. So that was the year after the residency. That's kind of what happened.
I have a question from Victor. He asks, would this be an experience that you would all do again?
I can answer that. I would not, just because my feeling about residencies is like, it was such a wonderful experience. And I think that other people that haven't done it would really enjoy doing it. I recommend it highly. And I think it's happening next summer again, probably, Caitlin.
Yeah,
And
it's not happening this summer.
next summer, yeah.
Obviously.
But it was such a wonderful experience. I wouldn't go back, and I couldn't recreate this time. And there's so many places to go on a residency and paint. So my feeling with residencies is always that way. I've had other residencies I felt the same about, where I had such a great experience, but I wouldn't go back. So it's just my personal, but I would totally go on a residency with all you people again and like go paint with you all again. So that's something.
I think I would, because I always kind of like, every time I look at a painting from that time, I have like an unfinished business feeling. Like there's, things that I left out, like that I could have done better. So I don't know. Like if the timing was right again, I might.
I think if my studio practice changed direction, that this would be a good residency for me to go back to, for sure. It was very, very good for me to do it.
We have a question from Lisa Lebowski, who joined us on the residency. She says, hi, what up, y'all? How much are you missing the residency right now with all the weirdness in the world?
It would be amazing to be there right now. Like if it caught there right now and we had to like do quarantine in the woods, I'd do it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I was having such nostalgia looking at all these photos in preparation for this talk.
I'm definitely missing the forest right now and like all my artist friends. So this week looking through all of it, I was just like, I wanted to blink myself to like a forest somewhere and paint and hang out with all of you guys, for sure.
We have another question from Jody. She says, hi, everyone. What are some of your favorite flowers, trees, or wildlife from your residency experience that informed your work?
The rocks mainly that were there. I mean, they stood out so much. Boulders, I know that Caris had a similar feeling about them.
So I'm more familiar with names of flowers here in Missouri. I painted stuff that I gathered from Colorado, but the research that I have is more Missouri. My favorite flower that to paint here that's of conservation concern is called a spiderwort. It's a really crazy, beautiful, complicated flower that's like all interconnected. I don't even think I have a photo on here actually of it. But you should look it up. It's called spiderwort. It's a terrible name, beautiful flower.
Ivy, do you have anything to add?
Well, the rocks in that landscape in that area of Colorado are really lovely, and they remind me, even though I think they're granite, they're not as red. They remind me of where I go in red rocks. I did not paint a hummingbird because they're so fast. But yeah, there's some similarities to some of the other places I go, like the aspen trees near the lake we went swimming at, and the twisted dry trees that you only get like in a landscape like that because of the harsh weather, which is familiar to me. And so I found it familiar but different, which is always fun.
Thanks.
Also the dead trees, right? Because you painted a few of those dead trees. Right?
Yeah, so did Lindsay. Like all those, there was a lot of those big dry piles of dead trees. Yeah, Lindsay's drawings of those were really exciting. And then these were the burnt trees. So like it all kind of went full circle in my head a little bit, because I was like thinking about how this is happening everywhere, all up the Rockies and all around the world, really, what's happening with trees. So it got me like really dorking out on that, and I'm still in that space. I'm still working on the same thing, so I'm not bored with it yet.
We have one last question that we're going to take, and then we're going to sign off. This question is from Bill, and he wants to know how COVID-19 has impacted your artwork/career.
What an upbeat question to end with. I think it's affected everybody's career. I will say a positive response to that. This is the time to make stuff. Like, yeah, galleries are closed right now in the real world. They're online, so they're still there. Work's still there. But as an artist and a writer, everybody who makes stuff right now, music, I think this is the time to just hunker down and make stuff and talk to your friends that make stuff. And it could be an exciting time if you let it be.
For me, my career is as an art professor and an artist. And this is a really scary time for a lot of fields, but definitely higher education is suffering quite a bit right now. I'm lucky to still have a job, and I hope that stays this way. But as we know, often when there are budget shortfalls, art tends to be one of the first to be cut. So I do have some frightening thoughts about the future, but this is just the pandemic, and we don't seem to have much control over the intricacies of our lives right now. So it doesn't seem to be very useful to worry.
Yeah, for me, same. I mean, it's changed work and career, but as far as my daily life and what I do every day, I still, nothing much has changed really. I mean, I still work every day and I do the same type of work. So if anything, I had some more time.
Great, thank you. So I'm gonna just say to everyone out there, go to the Abend Gallery website and you can see the whole show, all the artists. And I want to invite you to next week's talk on April 2nd. And you get to talk with me and Hannah Mogbell and Kirsten Savage. And Kim Power is going to be moderating. So that'll be a little change of pace there. So thank you all for everyone who showed up tonight. A huge thanks to Dave at Abend Gallery and the whole Abend Gallery crew. Thank you to the artists who joined me on Artists Off Grid: Patricia McEnroy, Jenya Chernoff, Lindsey Dunnagan, Ivy Hickam, Fabricio Suarez, Hannah Mogbell, Kirsten Savage, Kim Power, Lisa Lebowski, and Karis Carmichael Braun. Thank you for an extra thank you for Karis for helping me make this show possible. Stay safe, be well, and good night.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.